So that if somebody was to break into your house and threaten you with a big wrench and say, "Give me all your Bitcoin," you could give them those seed words and say, "Here's my wallet." They'll, if they're a semi-smart criminal, they'll check that before they leave your house. They'll see a small amount of Bitcoin. They might see that as a win, and then that'll be enough to get them off your case.
This is the Blue Collar Bitcoin Podcast, a show where average Joe firefighters explore the most important monetary technology of the 21st century. We talk Bitcoin, we talk finance, and we talk shit.
Thanks for joining us again here on the Blue Collar Bitcoin Podcast. We've got a great discussion for you today with Bitcoin QA joining us. QA is a privacy and security expert. He has some of the most in-depth guides around for securing your Bitcoin using CoinJoins, multi-sig wallets, nodes, Lightning Network, you name it. On his site, bitcoiner.guide, he's got some of the best. We highly recommend you check that out. We barely scratched the surface of all the information QA has to offer, but we took a successful stab at explaining seed words, hardware wallets, software wallets, and multi-sig setups. With all this in mind, it's always best to remember that more people lose their money by making stupid mistakes than will get robbed or hacked. So be careful, practice this stuff, don't get out over your skis, and experiment with small amounts of money. If you are in the market for a new hardware wallet or signing device, check out the Passport. It's a new hardware wallet that QA has contributed to developing. It can be found at foundationdevices.com. If you want to follow Bitcoin QA on Twitter, his handle is @Bitcoin_QA, and we are at blue_collar_BTC. You can also send us an email at bluecollarbitcoinpodcast@gmail.com. Enjoy the show.
All views and language expressed by the hosts and guests in this podcast are solely their personal opinions and do not reflect their employers or organizations they are associated with. Do not treat any of the content in this podcast as investment advice or as an inducement to follow a particular strategy. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
Bitcoin QA, welcome to the Blue Collar Bitcoin Podcast. How are you today?
I am well, thank you, gents. How are we both doing?
We're doing well.
Fantastic.
It's funny, for the longest time I've been listening to Odell on TFTC and his podcast, and he's said so much about your website, bitcoiner.guide, that I just assumed it was his. And so we had this whole, and I think this happens to you quite a bit. Actually, I've noticed it
does
a lot on Twitter. It's been one of those things where after I made the mistake and there was that whole issue of giving credit to someone else. And I was still suspecting at the time. I was like, I think this is maybe a NIM he's running and he doesn't want people to know.
For sure.
I actually thought that, but clearly you aren't Matt Odell. So
definitely not. Despite what the rumors say, I am not Matt Odell. But quite a few people have made that mistake. And I'm kind of thankful for him shilling my stuff for me, because it means that I don't have to be sort of that guy on Twitter that's sort of shilling his own stuff all the time. Matt kind of does it for me, which is kind of nice.
I'm going to tell you guys right now, I'm not convinced he's not Matt Odell. I think there's a very real possibility that this is a really cunning and brilliant voice disguise.
Yeah, Matt espouses a British accent in an enlightening and engaging way.
The best part of that is, if my theory there is indeed true that we are talking to Matt Odell, we now have a scenario where Matt Odell has had a series of conversations, hours worth of conversations with himself.
Yeah, he might be able to pull it off.
I've started to make a habit now that that when Matt shares something on Twitter of mine, that I comment underneath and just comment and congratulate him on how great the guide is.
I will say, we both listened to your recent discussion with him on Citadel Dispatch. Extremely good. We will link that in the show notes. A very exhaustive, thorough, and helpful exploration of a lot of introductory Bitcoin themes for noobs and intermediates, to dare I even say experts alike. So well done, and we'll link that in the show notes.
Yeah, thanks. Dispatch is a really great podcast, but Matt and the guest that he has on have a habit of diving quite deep into some specific topics, which can get a little bit overwhelming for people that are newer to the space. So I think that that episode will hopefully help
Yeah.
that sort of demographic.
I do think, because I've listened to a ton of those episodes and I love it when they, I mean, even when it's over my head, I can still pull a few really good nuggets out of it and understand and maybe grow a little bit having been pushed into that fire, you know? It's a very good thing to expose yourself, maybe a little over your head, because you'll still come out of it learning some things that you didn't otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very much the way that I've sort of tried to learn over the last couple of years as well. Is give you an example. I bought Andreas Antonopoulos' book, Mastering Bitcoin, which is incredibly technical. And the first time that I read through it, I'm going to say like 95% of it went completely straight over my head. But like you say, I've been back through it a couple of times now, and the with each pass, more and more of it makes sense, and it sort of ties up some loose ends that where I might have read up on a specific topic on Twitter or something. You'll stumble across a similar topic within the book, and you'll be like, "Oh shit!" You'll have that light bulb moment where things just slowly start to click together.
Right. So I'm curious, do you code at all, or are you just somebody who's just dove down the technical path without having any coding experience and just kind of learning as you go?
Yeah, none whatsoever. I couldn't be any further from a developer, and my personal background again couldn't be any further from that. I'm just somebody who has smashed their head off a keyboard multiple times until something sinks in. But equally, I've been absolutely blessed with, over the last couple of years, I've spent time virtually online with a lot of people that have been very, very good to me, and sort of been good enough to spend time to slowly explain things to me, or to hold my hand if I'm trying to dive into running a new node or something like that. Then people have been really generous with their time, which is one of the massive pros of the Bitcoin space, really. So I kind of just try and pay that forward, really, when people come to me for advice.
One thing I love about that, QA, is that it's a testament to how ultimately accessible this stuff is. And this is something Josh and I have barked out quite a bit. We're a couple technical dunces. I mean, we have no fucking clue what we're doing. We don't know how to code whatsoever. And not that we're super versed in all this stuff, but for the average person, we look quote unquote technical when it comes to Bitcoin. And it just simply comes from exploration, trial and error, getting your hands dirty. And I obviously you're a much more developed case than we are, but somebody like yourself can just dive in, have an open mind, continuously learn and develop a lot of these skills. But yeah, it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, you've got to put the work in. Proof of work is a concept that's banded around in the space quite a lot, and then it's true to not just to the protocol. It's true to your own personal learning as well. Is that there's hundreds and thousands of people out there willing to help, but you've got to be able to, like you say, dedicate the time to it, which it is difficult in daily life. We've all got jobs and kids, and I guess that's kind of testament to the draw that the Bitcoin ecosystem has, is that any spare sort of free time that people have when they're sort of even marginally engrossed into this, it slowly just sort of worms its way into your world, and you find yourself spending more and more time reading about it, listening about to podcasts about it, or just spending time educating yourself. It's a bit of a mind virus.
Yeah, I'm actually blown away over the last 4 years. I've been involved in this since 2017, and Dan has as well. And I remember going into some deep dives back then, trying to figure out what's the best way to hold this stuff as securely as possible. And I stumbled into something called the Glacier Protocol. This isn't something that I've even talked about on the show at all. And I don't even know if I've talked to Dan about it, but I'm sure you're familiar with what this is, QA. It was an extremely esoteric deep dive into how to buy a laptop that was, you basically buy a cheap laptop, you drill out the Wi-Fi card, you make it completely offline, you buy a bunch of dice, you do dice rolls. The amount of effort that went into securing cold stored Bitcoin before some of these maybe much more streamlined wallets and things like the cold card, it was so much more difficult to do this kind of stuff back in the day than it is now. It's mind blowing how easy this is compared to 4-5 years ago.
Yeah, I remember first reading about the Glacier Protocol a while back. It's not something that I've ever sort of really dove into, but I remember reading it and I shitting myself thinking that all the steps that I'd taken up to that point were completely worthless. I'm thinking, oh my God, I've been using my MacBook that I've been using for like 7 years to do all my Bitcoin stuff on, and have I done it all wrong? And I think there's absolutely value in that level of security for people that know what they're doing. But I'm absolutely not convinced that the 95% of us that are likely to be listening to this podcast need to even consider anything like that.
Right.
There's so many other better options out there now.
Yeah, that was like the assumption that the NSA was trying to steal your Bitcoin, and you had to be in a safe room with like no ability for anyone to hear your keystrokes and like all kinds of craziness. It's total paranoia stuff.
And the degree to which, we've said this on the show, but the degree to which this technology is accelerating does make your head explode. I mean, you have to draw parallels to the early internet. Like, I think there are a lot of big new entrants to Bitcoin that even in today's climate, in the year 2021, get introduced to this, and it's complicated to a point where they're like, well, this is never going to work. And your rebuttal is, well, so did people say in 1984 when it came to email. And now here's my mom who could barely turn on a computer 10 years ago, sending emails with ease. So these things are going to taper off in terms of complexity. But overall, I agree, Josh. It is wonderful. I mean, this stuff is accessible to damn near everyone with a brain. Like if you go on BTC sessions and just follow an 8-minute video, you can do this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So QA, let's dive into this. I want to hear some of your thoughts on maybe some of your favorite hardware wallets for new beginners and maybe intermediate people. And then what are just some of the best practices for holding your keys and making sure that you don't screw it up and lose your money?
Yeah, so I'm going to start by stating the obvious here, and hopefully, I've listened to loads of your podcasts, and I know that this is something that you guys champion as well. Is ultimately holding your own keys is 1,000,000% better than not holding your own keys and having your funds, held in a custodian like a centralized exchange. I personally think that even if that's in a mobile wallet, it's still distinctly better than leaving it on an exchange, because you've essentially got a massive amount of third-party risk where they could withhold the access to what's rightfully yours at will. They could ask for more information, or they could, God forbid that these cases are getting fewer and far between, thankfully. But the exchange could be hacked, they could be insolvent, they could be running on a fractional reserve basis and not have enough to pay all of their users. So having your Bitcoin in a wallet where you control the private keys is kind of like Bitcoin 101. So you can do that using a mobile wallet, a desktop wallet, or a hardware wallet. So speaking about hardware wallets, you asked me to sort of state some of the good ones. I'll start by stating my obvious bias. For those that don't know, I work for a company called Foundation Devices, and we actually manufacture a air-gapped hardware wallet called Passport. So I'm a little bit biased, obviously, but I genuinely think that we offer one of the best solutions to holding your keys. You can essentially think of it, we share a lot of the Coldcard's underlying code, but we believe we've packaged it in a sort of more approachable and easier to use interface that might be easier for newcomers to the space to interact with. It's much like the Coldcard. It's a device that operates without needing to be physically connected to any other device. So you can connect it to your desktop wallet or a phone wallet like Blue Wallet. You can do that all via QR codes, in a matter of seconds, which is where we sort of...
I'm sorry, the QR codes make things so much easier too for new people, because there's no having to shuffle the SD card from the Coldcard back to the computer and then back again. I haven't used one of those. I saw it and I was going to ask you about it, and I'm very interested in it, especially because they offer the ability to buy it with Bitcoin, and they'll return if the Bitcoin appreciates in the amount of time before you receive this passport, you're going to get the change back, right? Is that correct?
Exactly. So if you were to order today and you pay in Sats, it's $199 to pre-order. We're going to ship in February next year. If the Bitcoin price does a 10x, then you'll get the difference of those Sats that you sort of you would have lost out on. We'll give you that back when we ship the device. So whatever the price is when we ship the device, you've essentially reserved one of our hardware wallets, and you haven't lost the exposure to the upside of Bitcoin. So really unique approach to it. I wish it was my idea so I could take all the credit for it, but it was Zach, our CEO's bright idea. And it seems to have gone down an absolute storm because the pre-orders are flying through.
I'm tempted to do it myself, honestly. And that single reason right there is why I'm like, you know what, maybe I will.
Do you know what the other consideration as well for you guys that are in the US that have got access to services like Strike is that you can obviously I'm not talking from personal experience here, but my understanding of Strike is that you can link your current account, your sort of bank account, and you can be debited dollars and pay a third party in Bitcoin, so you can leverage that benefit that I've just said about pre-ordering the device without actually having to spend any Sats.
Great point, actually. Didn't think of that.
So you get the benefit of the upside, without having to part ways with any Sats at all.
Wait, so you get a passport as well as a Bitcoin call option for February of 2022, essentially.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
It's our new arbitrage opportunity, Josh. We're gonna
QA. I'm gonna buy 10 of them, and I'm gonna sell them to other guys at the firehouse, and I'm gonna get that exposure to that 22 call option.
I think you might be onto something there. So just to aside from me shilling my work location, for those that are more advanced, you touched on earlier the Cold Card is a great device. I run one myself. It's obviously less approachable to newcomers. It's sort of more geared towards more hardcore users that aren't afraid to kind of dig around in the menus a little bit to get the full functionality out of it. The flip side to that is that there's more functionality on the Cold Card, so advanced users might be able to take advantage of different functions that might not be focused towards beginners, like deriving child seeds from the original seed, or exporting different types of wallets as well, that again just is more sort of focused towards advanced users, but yeah, still a great device for those that are happy to dig around a little bit.
As far as very, very beginner devices, do you have a preference over Ledger or Trezor? Do you see one of those as superior? I know that Ledger is a closed source system. Does that bother you at all?
It does bother me. I try and pride myself to be a sort of a proponent of free and open source hardware and software. From a security standpoint, Ledger has got a very, very good track record. They make a device, it was my first hardware wallet back in 2019. It was the first device I ever bought. They make it, it comes with its own app. They make it very easy to interact with. They've got good documentation. But the defaults, in terms of how you use that device is not great for your own privacy. But again, a newcomer coming into the space probably isn't going to value that initially. But if they're anything like myself, they'll kind of look back on that and cringe a little bit. But in terms of comparing the Ledger and the Trezor, I haven't actually used the Trezor, but purely from an ideological standpoint, I'd be more likely to recommend a Trezor, just because of the way that they operate, and also because of the fact that Ledger had that big hack of all of their customer data. Thankfully, I wasn't affected by that, but for the people that have not heard about that, but essentially their database was hacked with all of their customers' names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, and home addresses as well. So it's kind of scary to think that there's a list out there doing the rounds on the
For sure.
internet where somebody could, with bad intentions, pick up that list, see who's in their local town, and go and pay them a visit because they know they've got a ledger and they might have some Bitcoin stashed in their house somewhere.
I wanted to back up just a second, QA, because I think this could be additive for our audience. Can you explain as simply as you can, what is a hardware wallet actually doing? Because I think there are a lot of Bitcoiners that don't understand what's actually going on one of these devices. They just suppose that's where your Bitcoin is. Can you explain what these devices are and how they actually interact with the Bitcoin protocol?
Yeah. So hardware wallet, unfortunately, is a name that's stuck, but it kind of gives, it's a bit of a misnomer, and it gives a false impression of what the device actually does. Because like you just said, Dan, it gives the impression that the Bitcoin is on the device when that's not actually the case. A better term for a hardware wallet that seems to be getting a little bit of traction, whether it's going to sort of overturn the legacy name, I don't know, is a sign-in device. Which is a little bit more accurate. So the main function of a hardware wallet is to it stores the keys, which are the access to your Bitcoin. So it's kind of a dedicated device. It has one main purpose of keeping that sort of secret secure, so that when you're interacting with different wallet software, you don't actually have to put your Bitcoin private keys, which are, again, like I said, the ability to spend the Bitcoin. You don't have to put them on, say, an internet-connected device that might be infected with malware, like your computer or your phone. Phones tend to be a little bit more secure. But yeah, so they're kind of like an offline way to store your Bitcoin private keys. That's the first main purpose. The second one is that when you're interacting and creating transactions, you can do that without, like I say, having to have your private keys online. I kind of just repeated what I just said, really. But it's a case of a dedicated device that you can sort of sign your transactions, whereby it sort of removes or diminishes the attack vector that, let's say somebody was to steal your phone out of your hand. If you've got your Bitcoin in a mobile wallet, and they can steal your phone and it's unlocked, they say they grab it out of your hand when you're on the street, they can steal anything, all of the Bitcoin that's in that phone wallet. Whereas if you're using your phone to manage your hardware wallet, if they steal your phone, they can't spend anything out of the wallet that's protected with your hardware wallet, because they need the hardware wallet as well. So it's that extra layer of protection where, if you've just got small amounts, let's say you're just dipping your toes into the space and you're buying a couple $100 worth of Bitcoin to see if you like how it works, and just to see how things go. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to spend another $200 on a device to store it.
Right.
This is when you sort of get to the realms of this, and everybody's kind of different, but it's when you get to the realms of, okay, I'm uncomfortable storing that amount of value on my computer or on my phone. That would make a significant change to my life if I was to lose it. That's when you want to start looking at one of these devices to sort of store or manage the access to your sort of life savings.
Absolutely. So we talked about hardware wallets a little bit, what they basically do. There's a couple of software wallets that interact with these hardware wallets that I want to get into a bit before we talk about multisig. So my two favorites at the moment, Spectre and Sparrow, and I've been using them kind of in tandem, trying to decide which is the one that I think is superior. I'm kind of leaning at Sparrow right now, but I know there's some other options out there like Wasabi and Samurai. Do you have a favorite? What's your pick? What do you use personally?
So you mentioned Samurai. Samurai's mobile only at the moment, but it is the mobile wallet of choice that I use. It's Android only, but in terms of feature set and sort of being privacy focused, Samurai wallet on my phone is absolutely my go-to wallet. When we go move up to sort of desktop, I'm pretty similar to yourself. My favorite is Sparrow wallet, but I'm also a big fan of Spectre desktop. So in terms of basic functionality, both are fairly similar. They're just an application that you download onto your computer that you can sort of manage hot wallets where the keys are on the computer, or cold storage wallets where the keys are in a hardware wallet, like we've just spoken about. The sort of minor differences between Spectre and Sparrow that might sway somebody listening to this one way or the other. If you don't have your own node, Spectre has an optional one built into it, where you can just click, you can download the application, and when you boot it up first time, it'll say, have you got a node? And you say yes or no, and it say, well, do you want one? And then in a couple of clicks, you can have a node running on your computer. Sparrow doesn't have that functionality, whereas Sparrow doesn't have that functionality of a built-in node, but some of the extra features that it does have that Spectre doesn't have is the ability to connect to other people's nodes. Now, generally speaking, this is not great for your own privacy. However, if you're just starting out and you just want to get used to using your Coldcard or your Ledger with a desktop wallet, it's a good option to get you started. They have some pre-selected nodes that are sort of from reputable people within the Bitcoin space that run public-facing nodes that you can just connect to get yourself started. And then, when you get more comfortable with that, and then you start to run your own node further down the line, you can just change the settings in the background so that it's connected to your own node. Sparrow also comes with its own CoinJoin implementation. Again, we're getting a bit more advanced now, but for those people that want to sort of improve their privacy, Sparrow has that functionality as well. So they're the kind of main differences. Generally speaking, Sparrow also has more sort of granularity, so that a more advanced user can sort of get stuck into the settings a little bit more, where they might want to tweak some of their transactions or some of the settings to sort of perfect that experience a little bit. But Spectre's also absolutely a great sort of new user option.
You actually just sort of took the words out of my mouth with where I was going to go with my question. There's two things I want to cover, if that's okay, to bring us back to the surface for somebody that is newer. The first one is going to be how nodes and wallets interact, which you just alluded to. So maybe if you don't mind, define a node and then how a wallet interacts with a node. And then I think, gentlemen, before we move on from wallets, we do need to cover what private keys are and best practices for key management before we get to multi-sig.
Sure, absolutely. I think that's a good point.
So why don't we start with what are nodes and how do wallets interact with nodes? QA.
Yep, sure. So whenever you transact on Bitcoin, be it a send or a receive, you have to do that through a node. So you can look at a node as your kind of a good analogy is, you need to go through your router at home to connect to the internet. Well, your Bitcoin node, or somebody else, if you're using somebody else's node, that is the kind of interface that you would use to speak to the rest of the Bitcoin network and to be able to send or receive transactions. If you don't have your own node, then you are absolutely using somebody else's node. Generally speaking, most of these wallets will default to the wallet provider will have that. They'll have a public facing node, so that it's easy for new people coming into the space to just to get started and try out the wallet. So the benefits of, why would you want to go through the pain of running your own node? Well, kind of one of the main things with Bitcoin is that we want to remove trusted third parties. Now, if you are using somebody else's node, they are a trusted third party. Their node is the one that tells your wallet how much Bitcoin you've got. In theory, if they were a malicious actor, they might be able to tell you the wrong information, so that you might think that you've got Bitcoin that you don't have. Which, generally speaking, there's been nothing on record of anything like this happening. But we're Bitcoiners, we're adversarial thinkers,
right.
So we should always strive to, or paranoid. Yes, good way to put it. The benefits of running your own node is that you're not relying on anybody else to tell you the current status of your Bitcoin wallet, how much you've got, which bits of Bitcoin are in which addresses. You're kind of looking after that yourself. Hope that answers the question in a simpler way as I can.
just to tie this all together really quick for somebody who's listening and might be a little bit lost because we're talking about nodes, software wallets, hardware wallets, all these different things. The basics are when you're holding your keys and you want to cold store them to keep them safe off the internet from malicious actors, your keys are stored on this hardware device. The hardware device needs software to communicate from itself to the Bitcoin network. And then the Bitcoin network is essentially your node, which is connecting to the network. So you're going from the Bitcoin network, your node, your software to your hardware wallet, and then back up that stack from your hardware wallet to your software to your node back to the internet to the Bitcoin network itself. So that's, if you want to just kind of simply understand the throughput up and down the stack, I think that's basically, if I'm not incorrect, QA, that's an easy way to think about it.
Yeah, so put simply, your node is the one that kind of listens out and broadcasts your transactions. The wallet software is the one that sort of coordinates it all, and your hardware wallet is the one that sort of signs off on any spends.
Right on.
Yeah. Here's the Dan stab at summarizing this for a just first day noob. Correct me if I'm wrong here, QA. So your private keys are what you need to access your, we'll call it, balance of Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain. Your hardware wallet is what holds those private keys. And then in order to access the Bitcoin blockchain, you need to do so through a node. So if you're not doing it through your own, you're doing it through somebody else's, which isn't necessarily a massive problem to begin with. But it is something to graduate up to as you're in the space longer, is to access the Bitcoin blockchain through your own node that you rely on and not trust anyone in between.
Yep, or a happy medium would be reach out to a friend like Josh or Dan who might run their own node and say, can I connect to your node rather than the default one on my wallet? That's kind of like a really good stepping stone if you know somebody like that before you can, dive in and look into running your own node. Because for most people, it is quite a big step. Somebody who's got one, or may have multiple already up and running, it might seem trivial, but I remember when I was first dipping my toes into the node world, and it was like speaking a foreign language because I didn't have a technical background, and I guess that's where the whole communities and podcasts and books and things like that are absolutely invaluable when you start to delve a little bit outside of your comfort zones.
So before we move on, let's talk private keys and key management. QA, what is a private key? How is it best to back it up? What purpose does it serve?
So again, this is one of those terms that's kind of been had its true meaning sort of whitewashed a little bit over the years. Private keys are, like you said, basically you need a private key to prove that you own a specific Bitcoin, a piece of Bitcoin that is trying to be sent. Users today won't actually interact directly with the true meaning of a private key. What you'll see when you set up a wallet, and thankfully 99% of the wallets today will all speak the same, they all abide by the same standards. So when you set up a wallet, you'll be given a list of words that'll either be 12 or 24 words, generally speaking. These are your kind of master backup for your Bitcoin, so that, I'll use the example of a phone wallet. So let's say you're setting up the phone wallet, you download Samurai Wallet, it'll show you 12 words on screen, and it'll say, write these words down. These are your master backup for the Bitcoin. So let's say you do that, you've got them written down on paper, and then the very next day you drop your phone down the toilet and it's dead, it's gone. Well, those 12 words that you wrote down, once you bought yourself a new phone, you can download Samurai Wallet or any other mobile wallet, pop those 12 words back in, boom, you can see your Bitcoin again and you haven't lost anything. The principle for that is exactly the same for mobile wallets, desktop wallets, or hardware wallets. They all abide by that same standard. So whenever you're setting up a wallet, doesn't matter which type it is, you'll be presented with some words. Make sure you write those down securely and slowly as well, because people have been known to make mistakes. And then I suppose then that's when we get into the weeds of, okay, great. So you've got them written down on paper. Now what? The problem is these words are written down in clear text. So let's say you've got a nosy sibling. If that nosy sibling was to get their hands on that bit of paper and they knew what they meant and what to do with them, then they could do exactly what I've just said. They could download a phone wallet, pop those words into that phone wallet, and run away with your Bitcoin and spend it into a wallet that they control. So whilst these backups are great and fantastic, and like I say, everybody sings off the same hymn sheet and it abides by this standard, you just need to be mindful of where you keep them and the method in which you keep them as well, because paper is not great at withstanding water, fire, or most things, to be honest with you. So the common approach to sort of tackle that is most people stamp them into metal. There's loads of different options where you can sort of you can even etch it or stamp it, like I say, into a sheet of metal, so that if your house was to burn down, then the likelihood is your Bitcoin life savings are going to survive if you keep it in your house, of course. So that's the kind of commonly accepted approach to storing these seed words.
Yeah, I think a lot of new Bitcoiners just view this as a backup, which it certainly is, but this is your Bitcoin. Like your seed words are your Bitcoin. And today, if a human being sees a treasure chest buried 7 feet underground, they are going to be prone to think there's a lot of money in there. And in the future we're moving into, as soon as people see 12 or 24 words written down in a safe or in some drawer next to your bed, it's going to, the same ding, 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 treasures right here is going to ring. So you just have to be cognizant, if you're a new Bitcoiner, these words are your Bitcoin. And maybe this is then a good segue, unless you want to throw anything else in, Josh, of the Q multisig. This is where there's no one point of vulnerability. If a nosy sibling or someone snooping around your house finds these 24 words, they're not going to have complete access to your entire treasure trove.
Yeah, I think multisig would be an awesome thing to hit on and try to just hit home on a couple of points, especially the fact that when you're operating with multisig, and what this is, for people that are listening, it's multiple hardware wallets or multiple seed words that all culminate into one master seed word that unlocks your Bitcoin or allows you to sign. You want to take it from the top, QA, on that?
Sure. Yeah. So everything that we spoke about so far is using the assumption of what we colloquially call a single signature, where you need a single private key to sign a transaction to spend. So that key could have come from, again, mobile wallet, desktop wallet, or hardware wallet. That's the typical setup. Enter multisig, which uses exactly the same principle. The difference being is that the wallet, upon setup, will combine any number of different types of wallet to create a single wallet. So a common setup would be a two of three, which means that you need 2 signatures from a possible 3 that we use to set up the wallet. So let's say myself, Josh, and Dan, we set up a 2 or 3 multisig. We deposit 1 million sats into that. To be able to move any sats out of that wallet in a spend, it would need 2 of us to sign off on that transaction before it would be accepted by the Bitcoin network. So to tie that back into with the seed word piece that we've just said, so let's say, again, I'll use the analogy of myself, Josh, and Dan. We've all got a key. We've all got a hardware wallet at our house that is one part of that multisig wallet. If my sister was to come into my house and take my hardware wallet and my seed words for that hardware wallet, she gets absolutely nothing, because she can't spend from that, because you need 2 signatures to be able to spend from the multisig wallet that the 3 of us set up. So you can see the massive, it completely removes that initial attack vector of somebody seeing your seed words or getting their hands on your hardware wallet and being able to break into it, which again is very, very unlikely. These devices are highly secure. The seed words tend to be the weak link in this. But multisig does come with its own complexities, in the fact that, if you were just a single person doing a multi-sig setup, and again use the example of a 2 of 3 setup, that means that you need to have 3 different secure locations to keep your hardware wallets and your seeds. Now, that's quite a personal thing that only whoever's listening to this will be able to answer. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most people probably don't have 3 secure locations that they would trust to keep a key to their life savings, but it's just something we're thinking about. And then we kind of get a little bit more into the weeds in terms of backups. With a single SIG backup that we've spoken about earlier in the show, it's simple. You just stamp the words into metal or you write them down on paper. That's it. With multi-sig, you need to do that, but you also need to back up some of the I'll try and keep it simple. The metadata or the sort of the wallet structure, you need that as well as the seeds to be able to recover the wallet in a doomsday scenario.
Yeah.
So, and I suppose the final thing as well that I always like to mention with multi-sig is that somebody listening to this might be a competent Bitcoiner and they might be comfortable in going through that setup process. They know how to back it up. But one thing to consider is what would happen to that Bitcoiner if they were to be hit by a bus tomorrow. Is their wife, sister, son, whoever going to, number one, even know what a multi-sig wallet is? Number two, know where to find all those keys? And number three, if they know both of those things, do they know what to do with them when they've got all of those pieces back together? So the consequences of not having a good sort of inheritance plan, especially with multi-sig, can be quite dire. So I suppose there's probably people screaming at their headphones now saying, well, just write the instructions down.
I was just going to bring that up, but then that's an OPSEC issue right there. Like somebody finds that and they can, follow the rabbit trail.
Yeah. So you absolutely exponentially more secure from people being able to steal your Bitcoin. There's no doubt about that. But it does bring in a lot of other caveats that people need to consider before they dive in and do this themselves.
There is a couple other options I think that we should highlight for people. So multi-sig is incredibly secure, as you said, but it does bring some more complexity. But there's a couple of other ways you can secure your Bitcoin superior, I think, than just a single signature, but it doesn't quite, and it gives you a bit more security than a single signature, but it doesn't quite cause all the complexity of this multi-sig setup. And one of those is a passphrase on a single signature wallet. And I'm not going to steal your thunder here, QA. I'd like to, could you go over that?
Yeah, Josh, tell me if we're in alignment here. I'm interested to hear him. I sort of see 3 options in this sphere you just mentioned, Josh. Tell me if you agree. One is passphrase. The other is seed XOR with a cold card. And the third is like a Shamir backup.
Right. All 3 of those. Yeah, I was going to go into each one of those.
So, so a passphrase for those that are listening is so we spoke about seed words. So you've got a wallet will give you 12 or 24 words when you set it up. That's the normal, the standard. You can optionally add an additional word or phrase to that initial bunch of seed words as like an extra layer of protection, so that if again in the nosy sister scenario, she gets her hands on your seed words where you stamp them into metal. If you've applied that wallet with a passphrase, an additional word or phrase, then if she was to steal those seed words, put them into a wallet, she sees absolutely nothing. She sees an empty wallet. She would actually need to grab hold of your seed words and your passphrase and enter those both at the same time into the chosen wallet software or device to be able to access your kind of real wallet. So it's that extra layer of protection. The caveats are that if you do use a passphrase, don't store it with your seed words because it completely negates the benefits because you're storing both of those secrets together. If you apply a passphrase and you back it up, but you lose it or you forget it, you've lost access to your Bitcoin. You have 0 Bitcoin.
Yep.
So it's a great option, but you just, again, need to be cognizant of the implications of, you've now got 2 things to back up. So again, you need 2 secure locations that are not together. I suppose one of the obvious ones is that people will try to remember it as well. which I think is a great option, but it shouldn't be your only option. It should be in addition to storing it in a robust fashion on metal, and again in a secure location.
Absolutely. And then what Dan mentioned is Shamir. Shamir is I don't know if it's available on any other wallets that I know of besides the Trezor Model T, and that's effectively like the perfect mix of multi-sig and single sig in one, where it's a single signature, but the Trezor splits that into however many segments you want, and it'll give you a series of seed words for, like, say you want it to be 2 of 3. It'll break those initial seed words into 3 different portions, and each one of those is also 24 words. And then you need a majority, 2 of 3, in order to get your original seed words back. So it's kind of a good compromise between single sig and multi-sig in that way. And you wouldn't need to have that metadata in order to recover it, which is nice.
Yeah, for the user, like you can, like Josh said, you can do 2 of 3, you can do 3 of 5. I think it escalates even beyond that. Yeah. Obviously, you still have your single point of failure with the wallet itself. Like, I guess the doomsday in every Bitcoiner's mind is a guns to their head and their wallets in front of them. Give me your Bitcoin type thing.
Right.
This doesn't solve that problem, but in terms of a backup, I mean, it's a way to kind of graduate towards multi-sig, or get your hands dirty with what that kind of feels like to have multiple sets of seed words and securing those.
Yeah, just to come back on the gun to your head scenario, I should have probably touched on this when we spoke about passphrases. Is what you could do is, let's say you have your 24 words, you could deposit a small amount of Bitcoin into that wallet. So let's say 5% of your total Bitcoin holdings. Then you could apply the passphrase, which is essentially a brand new wallet, and have all the 95% of your funds in that wallet. So that if somebody was to break into your house and threaten you with a big wrench and say, "Give me all your Bitcoin," you could give them those seed words and say, "Here's my wallet." They'll, if they're a semi-smart criminal, they'll check that before they leave your house. They'll see a small about amount of Bitcoin. They might see that as a win, and then that'll be enough to get them off your case when you're safe in the knowledge of, well, the 95% of my Bitcoin is in those seed words plus the passphrase. It's in that completely different wallet. Gives you that plausible deniability. I know I've made a lot of assumptions there on what the criminal would actually do, but it gives you a fighting chance in a scenario just like that.
So I have a cold card, and one of the features I love about it is that you can have multiple pins, so that one pin can access a wallet that is totally unrelated to the actual wallet. Does the Passport have some feature like that?
Not just yet. It's on our short-term roadmap. We kind of slimmed down the the features initially, just so that we could get to market sooner. But we've got a fair chunk of more advanced features that are going to be implemented over the next couple of months. One of those being the feature that you just mentioned.
Awesome. And does it also have a secure element similar to the cold card?
Yep, absolutely. Same one.
Okay.
So basically the concept behind Passport, without having looked into it, is it's a Bitcoin only wallet, I'm assuming, with kind of the same ethos and team behind it that a cold card would. Bitcoin forward, security first above all else, but it's just a little bit more accessible than cold card. Is that kind of the market you guys are going for?
Exactly that. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. We just packaged it in what we believe to be a more sort of approachable case. It's got a proper. Remember the types of keyboard that you had on the old Nokia phones, where you could.
Yep.
So if you've got, say, we've just been talking about passphrases. If you've got a long passphrase that might be 4 or 5 words long, that's going to take you a while to implement to type in on a cold card. It absolutely works, don't get me wrong, but it's a much nicer experience to import on the keyboard that we ship with Passport. Just one example that kind of makes the UX a little bit easier.
So it's fireman friendly is basically what you just described.
I'll let you guys be the judge of that.
Yeah, we're going to have you send us over a couple examples to check out and review for you.
If we weren't sold out, I would absolutely do that for you fellas. But unfortunately, there's nothing left on the shelves.
It's a good problem to have, man.
I know I had to give it a shot, but I'm probably going to buy one anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to have to buy some call options for February 2022.
I I desperately want to get into like 87 more topics, but we got family obligations we're running up against here, gentlemen. What a travesty.
Yeah. QA, this has been an amazing, enlightening little chat. And I think it's going to be really useful for the people that are just getting into this stuff and are having questions about what all of this crazy Bitcoin jargon is. And I think that you really helped us illuminate that for people. So thank you.
Yeah, absolute pleasure, guys. And I think I think we've only just skimmed the surface a little bit there. So more than happy to come back on if you want to dig into anything else.
Oh, absolutely. We have a ton. And would you mind giving us a little handoff to your website and the passport?
Yep. So if anybody wants to check out the guides on wallets, nodes, privacy, holding your own keys, that sort of stuff, if you head to bitcoiner.guide, that's my sort of homepage for all of those resources. And if you want to buy a call option for February 2022, you can go to foundationdevices.com where you can sort of read up on Passport, and we are actually making some changes to the batch 2 device. I can't share too much at the moment, but keep your eyes peeled on the Twitter and the website. We're going to be sharing the sort of improvements that we've made to the device for the batch 2 over the coming weeks.
Awesome.
Yeah, if you're not following QA on Twitter, you're making a mistake. Pure signal. So yeah, stop what you're doing and follow him on Twitter, because he is an incredibly useful voice for Josh and I know anybody that has questions and needs a little bit of hand-holding through this Bitcoin process.
Yeah, I think we all do. I make mistakes all the time with this stuff, and I just experiment. So just play with it, play with very small amounts of money so that when you screw up, you don't cost yourself a lot of money. Or just learn how to use the testnet. That would be useful too.
Yeah, QA, I think a good place to end is for me to just put an exclamation point and an emphasis on what you said about inheritance planning. This stuff is really cool. There's so much optionality in securing your Bitcoin. But if you were to drop dead right now, is your kin, your spouse, your kids, are they going to have access to what is probably some of the biggest wealth building you're going to do in your life? And if that answer is no, then that solution is not viable. Like, explore with a small amount of coin, make sure everybody around you or whoever's going to inherit this is comfortable before you graduate to these more complicated schemas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Completely co-sign that. And generally speaking, keep it simple for as long as you can. More people will screw themselves out of their own Bitcoin than will get hacked and lose it via that method.
Absolutely. All right, QA, thank you very much for joining us. Take care.
Pleasure, guys. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening into the show. If you enjoyed this discussion, be sure to subscribe on whatever app you're using for podcasts. And if you have an extra minute, go ahead and leave us a review. You can also follow us on Twitter. We're at blue_collarbtc. We invite questions, comments, and inquiries of any kind, and our email is bluecollarbitcoinpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to you joining us next time on the Blue Collar Bitcoin Podcast.